you're spending 4. So if there's a terrible market crash and your portfolio takes a big hit, like now you're spending 5. Okay. If I'm going to spend down at a 5% rate of 100% of my principal, like this is pretty straightforward, 5 into 100, like it takes me 20 years to actually run out. So you have a bit of runway to realize like, oh, maybe we should make an adjustment here.
How much time have you spent thinking about retirement? Have you started a retirement plan yet, or are you still trying to figure out how to do it? Today, I'm going to try to answer 3 specific questions. Number 1, how much money do you need to save to have a successful retirement? Number 2, how long is it going to take me to get there? And number 3, how do you make sure that once you're retired, you don't run out of money? Hopefully, by the end of the video, you might just learn that retirement is possible for you a lot sooner than you thought. Or, maybe you learn what you already knew, which is that you're going to retire broke as a joke and eat cat food in your golden years. The first thing that you should do is try to figure out how much money that you're going to need each year and each month in order to support yourself in retirement. And from there, you can figure out how big or small of a nest egg that you need to create. You might be surprised at the number that you come up with. When you ask most people how much they think that they need in order to retire, you'll most likely hear something like 3 or 4 million. As it turns out, most people don't need anywhere near that much money. To understand how much you actually need, you've got to start by figuring out how much money you spend each month. When you take a deep look at the numbers, you'll probably find that you don't need nearly as much as you originally thought that you did. Or maybe you find out that you will need a lot more money because your expenses are so high. If that's the case, then maybe you should redirect your efforts to figuring out ways that you can reduce your expenses and increase your savings rate. For a typical average American, we expect a retirement income target to be around $3,000 or so per month, or about $36,000 per year. Remember that when you're retired, you aren't going to be investing any new money, or paying for car payments or mortgage payments. You're really only needing this money to pay for your actual living expenses and all your insurance deductibles and premiums. You don't actually need a multi-million-dollar portfolio to generate $36,000 in income. Believe it or not, a $900,000 nest egg invested in a safe, conservative strategy will actually easily produce this amount of income. If you're one of those people like me who didn't receive any meaningful financial education when you were growing up, then you might have made the same mistakes that I did when I first entered the workforce. In the early 2000s, I was finishing up a tour of duty with the U.S. Navy and transitioning into the business world. Like everybody else, I was briefed by HR about the company 401k plan. It was a generous plan that offered a 100% matching contribution up to the first 10%. Did I contribute? Did I at least save enough to get the employer match? Well, no. No, I didn't. You see, I made 2 crucial mistakes. Mistake number 1, not understanding how investments appreciate. Looking back now, I'm embarrassed to admit that I didn't really understand how investing works. I could understand that you always want to save your money for a rainy day, but it just didn't make sense for me to lock up my money in some investment that I might never even live to use. Here was my thought process at the time. Let's imagine that I save $1 million. At the time, my salary is around $100,000. So I concluded that $1 million would support me for 10 years, right? $100,000 per year for 10 years, then I'd be broke. I'd be out of money. What do I do then? The crucial fact that I was totally overlooking was that a portfolio grows, and as long as it grows larger each year than the amount of money you take out of it to live on, this portfolio will never run out of money. It will pay you an income for the rest of your life, forever. Mistake number 2, not understanding the value of time. When it comes to retirement investing, time is the most important factor that you have to consider, because money exponentially compounds, which is to say that you earn interest on top of interest Over long periods of time, you end up with ridiculously large sums of money if you start investing as soon as you enter the workforce. For example, a 25-year-old only needs to save about $250 per month to produce a $1 million nest egg, whereas a 40-year-old needs to save about $850 per month to reach the same milestone. And that's assuming a 10% annual rate of return, which is fairly large. Okay, so how can we know how much money we need to invest to create a portfolio that never runs out of money? Well, we know that because of the 4% rule. A quick way to figure this out is to take the annual income that you want your portfolio to pay you in retirement and multiply that by 25. So if you wanted $40,000 paid to you each year from your nest egg, then you would multiply 40,000 with 25 to get 1 million. This means that a $1 million portfolio will generate at least $40,000 worth of income for you for the rest of your life, and it will never run out of money. I'll try to condense this as much as possible, but here's a primer. In 1992, a researcher named William Bankin investigated safe withdrawal rates to try to understand why some retirees run out of money and went broke, while others ended up fabulously wealthy over similar periods of time. What Bill discovered was that over every rolling 30-year period, as long as you never withdraw more than 4% of your nest egg each year, your portfolio will never run dry and leave you broke.
And so when Bill looked at all these different rolling 30-year periods throughout history, what he found was the worst case scenario was a withdrawal rate of about 4.15%. Bill rounded it to 4.1. We collectively rounded it to 4. And that's where the 4% rule came from. It was the one rate that worked in the worst historical market sequence we could find.
In 1998, there was a follow-up study called the Trinity Study, which went on to corroborate Bill Bankin's 1992 findings.
We started someone with $1 million just to make the math nice and round and easy. Obviously, it's a 4% rule, so you can do 4% of whatever number you want. But we started people with $1 million. They finished with as much as $9 million. On average, it's like say the 50% of the time, the median value is more than double their wealth, almost 3x where you started. So 50% of the time you start at 1, you finish with almost 3 on top of a lifetime of spending. 96% of the time you finish with the original $1 million. And once one line, one little tiny squiggle cruises down to 0 at the very, very end. If you had a 31st year, you would have gone below the 0 line. And that's why we have the 4% rule, because that one last squiggle would have run short. So it wouldn't have worked in all the historical sequences if you didn't protect against that one worst squiggle.
When it comes to wealth preservation, which is what the studies that led to the 4% rule did, the portfolios that they were testing were standard 60-40 portfolios. In other words, 60% U.S. stock market index fund and 40% U.S. bond market index fund. Without knowing your specific circumstances, I would say generally speaking that if you're in the accumulation phase of your savings journey, I would invest in the J.L. Collins Simple Path to Wealth portfolio. If you don't know what that means, there's a link in this video's description to this exact portfolio on M1 Finance. Once you create an account, you can tell M1 Finance to automatically invest into this strategy whenever you make a deposit. If you're in the retirement red zone, which means that you're within 10 years of retirement or you're in the first 10 years of retirement, then you should protect yourself with more bonds. A 50-50 couch potato portfolio, the permanent portfolio, or all-weather portfolios make the most sense here. And finally, if you're in the drawdown phase and you're living on your nest egg, then you should consider a classic 40-60 portfolio, or even any of the bond-heavy conservative portfolios. Since you can't afford to make any mistakes at this point, I would definitely consider seeking a professional to provide financial guidance at this stage. Okay, so I promised you that I'd answer 3 questions today. How much money do you need to save to have a successful retirement? How long is it going to take you to get there? And how do you make sure that once you're retired, you don't run out of money? First, we learned that we can figure out how much money we need to retire by multiplying the amount of income we want each year by 25. To figure out how long it's going to take to get there, we're going to use the compound interest calculator in the link below to figure out when we're going to hit our savings goal. And finally, we're going to make sure that we always comply with the 4% safe withdrawal rule so that we never have to worry about running out of money in retirement. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Please keep in mind that this video is for entertainment purposes only and should not be used to make any investing decisions. Full disclosure, I personally own positions in the securities discussed in this video. Thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate the support. We'll talk to you next time.